Hello and welcome into the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Carter Yates, and joining me from beautiful Lubbock, Texas, is senior writer Mike Craven. Craven, can you describe what Lubbock was like yesterday, the pregame festivities for the BYU game? We'll talk about the game, but I want to get the pregame atmosphere first.
Well, first off, I'm in beautiful Snyder, Texas.
I forget about the Snyder play.
Couldn't afford the Lubbock hotels. It was cheaper. It was half price for 2 nights in Snyder compared to 1 night in Lubbock. And Snyder's an hour and a half on the Austin side of Lubbock, so it saved me an hour and a half driving on Friday, an hour and a half driving today when I get on the car. So it was a solid choice, I think. Made for a very long day yesterday. But to your point, the atmosphere was incredible. You know, even for an 11 o'clock game, I got there about 7:45, and game day area was packed. The tailgates were going on inside the stadium. There was just a buzz there, and kind of a who's who of Texas Tech alums and football players. Danny Amendola, Patrick Mahomes, recent guys like Caleb Rogers and Tyree Wilson, and Taj Brooks, and so. It was a big moment. It was a culminating moment. And there was a little bit of something was hanging over it. I think it was like, well, they better win. There was some major stakes involved here, and Texas Tech needed to win this one because I think everybody knows that a 10-2 Texas Tech is going to get left out of the college football playoff. And so you have this moment, you have this atmosphere, you have this situation, but you have to go capitalize on it. And I felt like that was kind of lingering before the game.
Were they like they better win in the sense of they were confident they're going to win this game, or did you sense like trepidation and nervousness?
There was trepidation and nervousness, not within the staff or the players. I think there was real confidence there. I mean, you talked to Joey or Blanchard or Mac before the game, and it was like, oh, it's a big game, but they felt good. You could tell they felt good about the matchup and what they were able to do. But, we talk about Aggie battered syndrome and kind of like Texas A&M's kind of Lucy, Charlie Brown, kind of pulling the football thing. Texas Tech is probably even more than that. Mm-hmm. Especially for the guys I know that are Texas Tech grads and younger. They haven't experienced many high moments. That 2008 season is about as big as it get, and that was a loss to Oklahoma and getting left out of the tiebreaker for the Big 12 championship game. And so, I think there is still some of this, like, I can't believe this is our life. And there's this worry that something bad must be coming. Like we're Texas Tech football, like it can't all be this good. Like it is going to fall off the tracks. And at home against BYU with game day and the biggest game of the week and all the eyes on Lubbock, like it was a big spot for a letdown. And I think the fan base, at least the ones I know, kind of felt that. But I don't think the coaching staff does. I don't think the players do. And that showed once the game started against BYU.
Yeah, it really was not close, the game. Texas Tech manhandled BYU 29-7, and it would have been 56-7 if they could score in the red zone. So Texas Tech is 9-1, which is the best 10-game start since 2008. And, Craven, you had 2 stories up on TexasFootball.com. I really liked your story, building the case about Joey McGuire. And building the case is a reference to him building the trophy case at Cedar Hill before they won all those district championships and state championships. Build it, and then they will come is kind of his ethos. I thought it was so interesting how 4 years to the day that he's hired, he gets this signature win against BYU. Can you kind of explain your column after the game and why you think Joey McGuire's Cedar Hill tenure actually made him the perfect man for this Texas Tech job?
Well, what's funny about it is it didn't make him the perfect man for what the Texas Tech job was when he got it.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is now. And at Cedar Hill, what Joey was able to do, and I don't want to get reductive here, but what Joey was able to do was to keep all the talent in-house. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn when I say there's some movement that goes on occasionally in those South Dallas schools. And, I think Cedar Hill was losing a lot of those star players to Duncanville and DeSoto and Lancaster back then and some of those other programs. I think Joey got there and kind of closed the fences. And so he had more talent than everybody. And I think Joey's superpower is dealing with egos. He can make everybody feel huge, and he can make everybody feel a part of something. And, he had, I think it's like 95 Division I athletes coming out of there, 6 NFL football players. But it wasn't a program that was known for being any good. They had not won playoff games. They had not won district championships. As I mentioned in the story, they didn't even have a trophy room for the football team because there were no trophies to put into a trophy case. And while he was talking to the basketball coach who did have trophies, the basketball coach kind of mentioned like, hey, you're thinking of this wrong. You need to build it, and then you'll get the trophies for it. And it struck me as pretty similar to what McGuire's going through at Texas Tech, a program that if you take away the individual awards from the wide receivers and the quarterbacks, and there's not a lot of team trophies in there. Last outright conference championship as border conference members. They share, 2 Southwest Conference titles, none in the Big 12 so far. But they've built this cathedral, and they've built something that should attract that. They didn't wait to win Big 12 championships to go build the $252 million facility. Like, they're betting on the come. Like, they are doing it in the same way in which he did it at Cedar Hill. And it's just one of those sliding glass door moments that, Joey probably seemed like an odd fit when he was first hired at Texas Tech. And now when you need somebody to drive this level of Cadillac, you found a person who's won state championships doing the exact same thing. And he seems perfect for what Tech needs right now.
Yeah, and right now, Texas Tech, the way they're built to win is completely different from how it was in the Mike Leach era, where it was air raid and no defense. This is almost ground and pound and then bank on your defense. I mean, it's sensational. They allowed 67 rushing yards against BYU. They're allowing 12.6 points per game this year. Joey McGuire is touting Jacob Rodriguez for a Heisman candidacy, and he's not speaking out of turn. Like, Jacob Rodriguez could be in New York if this keeps going as it is.
All season we've talked about Texas Tech in the prism of the Big 12. After watching them in person yesterday, it's time to talk about Texas Tech in the prism of like the national landscape. I think they're one of the best 5 teams in the country.
Wow.
If they wore an SEC uniform and had the exact same roster, they would already be a top 5 team in the country. They have beaten every single team. Yesterday's win was the lowest point differential of any of their 9 wins, and it was 22 points.
And it wasn't even that close.
I mean, their only loss is on the road to the defending Big 12 champion with Sam Leavitt healthy, and they had a backup quarterback in that game. And they were up in the fourth quarter after the offense got off the ball for the last. So I think Texas Tech is the class of the Big 12. I think they're a true national championship contender. That defense puts them in any game. Like, you tell me an offense that wants to see the Texas Tech defense or would control that unit. David Bailey's great. Romello Height is awesome, but interior-wise, like Lee Hunter, A.J. Holmes, those linebackers you mentioned with Jacob Rodriguez, Cole Wisniewski had a huge game yesterday, especially early on as BYU was kind of getting some run game going, kind of in the first couple of drives. Wisniewski from his safety position kind of laid the boom a few times and had, I think, 6 or 7 pretty quick tackles there in the game. And then the front 7 figured it out. Shield Wood made some adjustments, and then all of a sudden BYU couldn't run the ball anymore. But Texas Tech is not your older brother's Texas Tech. This is not throw it around the yard, put up 400 yards passing and score 60 points. They're going to play really good defense. They're going to run the ball. They're going to be solid on special teams. They've turned the ball. They got a turnover special teams wise. They created a couple defensively. So just an all-around performance, a really good football team. And the only thing that can stop Texas Tech from winning the Big 12 is Texas Tech.
I saw that Max Olson at ESPN had the story about Texas Tech's $7 million defensive line, and David Bailey, I think, takes over $3 million of that, and he might be underpaid at $3 million. That dude is a monster, and that just shows you the money they've spent. And it's not all just transfers, right? There's homegrown guys. You mentioned in your column for every transfer, they've got a Jacob Rodriguez or a Ben Roberts or a the guys that they have developed in their program. But this is like an SEC caliber roster they have right now.
And credit to Texas Tech for, kind of grabbing the bull by the horns and being on the front foot here. There's there's teams that could have afforded to add David Bailey to their roster, but I think they were scared to add the highest paid player on their defense that late in the game. Right? There's this hesitancy of, well, we have Colin Simmons or whatever team. It's like, can we really make David Bailey the highest paid player in our defensive end room? And Texas Tech goes, yeah, he's the best one that we can go find, and they just signed Romello Height. And maybe there's this worry of, well, we just signed Romello Height to a 7-figure deal. If we bring in David Bailey, what does that make him feel like? What does that make our other defensive ends feel like? What does that do to our locker room? The Felix Ojo thing at offensive tackle with true freshmen coming in, making that kind of money. I think there's this fear around college football. They want to do the pro model, but not really. They're scared to go get the big time free agent. They're scared to go make the first round draft pick the highest paid. Texas Tech is jumping in 2 feet.
Mm-hmm.
This is the new world we're living in. And until somebody says we can't swim, this is how we're going to do it. And I think that's admirable. Like I think that is what has given them this advantage, is having somebody like Cody Campbell who has the money and also the foresight and also the drive and also the stomach for it. It's just like this perfect storm in Lubbock. And that, to me, that was what, you talk to Kirby Hokut, you talk to Cody Campbell, you talk to the coaches, you talk to the players. It's just they're winning this new game. Like they are playing it better than anybody else in the country, and they've closed the gap in a way that nobody else has. Like imagine if Ohio State was doing it this way, or Texas, the Gulf would get, imagine if Lee Hunter and David Bailey played for Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And in the past they would have transferred to Texas or to Georgia or Ohio State, but now Texas Tech, kind of with their aggressiveness, is able to go get those guys, and they are really, really good. They are legitimately good.
Do you think Texas and Ohio State do that next year, following the Texas Tech model now?
I don't know, because they recruit in a different way. And who knows if Tech does it this way in 3 years, if they're signing top 5, top 10 recruiting classes on a regular basis. I think there's an ability to go do it because you can upgrade your roster in a obvious way.
Yeah.
And they're doing it. Ohio State, I don't know if they want to rock the recruiting boat out of high school. They did bring in a Kalo Downs. Texas has used it more as a Band-Aid. We're going to go fill holes rather than go get stars. And you've seen other places like Miami and Florida State where that hasn't exactly worked in the same way. But I think it's great what Texas Tech has done, how they've done it, and I think they've taken advantage of the new system. And anybody who is negative towards it, in my opinion, is just a hater.
Yeah, a lot of Big 12 coaches were hating this offseason in media days.
Jealousy. I mean, they wish they could do it, and maybe some of them don't, and that's another problem.
That's a different problem entirely. I do think the Felix Ojo part of it's going to be super interesting to watch next year, because they're backing up the Brinks truck for proven guys like David Bailey. This will be a different type of locker room dynamic that Joey McGuire will have to navigate when you give it to an 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid coming in.
Yeah, the evaluation is huge, because you can't miss on those guys, because then it can kind of up in the locker room a little bit. Because it's one thing if you look at David Bailey and you go, man, that dude's making $2 million, $3 million, and I'm only making $500,000, but he's 6 times better than me.
Yeah,
because the players know.
Mm-hmm.
It's man, that dude's badass. Of course he's getting paid that kind of money or whatever. If I want to get that kind of money, I need to go step it up. The problem becomes when you're making $500,000, that guy's making $1.5 million, and you're better than him.
Yeah, and that'll be something.
So far, outside of maybe Micah Hudson, Texas Tech has hit on all these big money acquisitions. As long as they continue to do that, I think they're going to be fine. And then it goes back to McGuire being the perfect guy to kind of be the maestro, be the conductor of this ship.
Well, that Joey McGuire culture is going to get tested against UCF, because it's easy to get up for the BYU game days there. It's going to be tougher to get up for the UCF game coming up next week.
Yeah, no doubt. They have Central Florida, then an idle week, which I think is a pretty good one for them, right? Because they get a little bit of a rest, and then they go at West Virginia, in theory, the Big 12 championship game, and then the college football playoffs start. So I wouldn't want to play a game in Lubbock in the first round. And I think the way things are going, if Texas Tech wins out, they're probably a 5, 6, or 7 seed, and they get a first round playoff game at Lubbock, and that'll be electric.
I saw you had some pictures on Twitter X of Cody Campbell following behind him closely. He is huge, by the way, and just a big. You forget he's a former offensive lineman until you see him in person. You're like, oh my god, that guy is that's a former Division I football player.
Right, and his son's even bigger. Carson, a young player out in the Fort Worth area, I believe, already has 7 or 8 offers. I think Nebraska and Tennessee have come in pretty recently. I did ask him, is everybody playing for second place? Like, you grew up a Texas Tech fan, your dad's Cody Campbell, aren't you going to Texas Tech? And he was like, no, not necessarily. I was like, okay, brother. Everything's going great for Texas Tech, on the field, off the field, all that kind of stuff. And so you just got to keep it on the tracks.
Well, it's all going great for Texas A&M too, because they just jumped all over Missouri in that freshman quarterback, Matt Zoller's 38-17 victory. A&M 9-0 for the first time since 1992. That defensive performance is going to show CFP selection committee chair Mack Rhodes for saying that A&M's defense is what held them back from being ranked over Ohio State and Indiana.
Yeah, it'll be curious. I wrote in my 10 thoughts this week, I think Texas A&M deserves to be the number 1 ranked team in the nation. If you did a blind, if you put Ohio State, Indiana, and A&M's resume down and didn't put their names next to them, I think A&M would be picked as the top ranked team in the nation. And I know Ohio State's defense is better, but Ohio State gets to play against the Big Ten. And that helps a lot in terms of those defensive numbers. A&M has the best win. That's on the road against Notre Dame. Ohio State's best win is at home against Texas in week 1. Indiana's beat Oregon on the road, which is a good win, but I don't think Oregon is the top 10 team in the country this year. And then you go and you almost lose to Penn State. So A&M is, I think this is their 4 out of the last 5 games they've won by double digits. The only one that they haven't was on the road against Arkansas in Petrino's first game as an interim. And we've kind of seen how the dead cat stuff happens, but 464 yards of total offense against Missouri. It felt like a game they were always in control of and probably could have scored more points and won by a bigger margin if that was their goal.
Well, the only time that Missouri really had any momentum was when they were about to get the ball down 21-7, I believe. It was midway through the third, and A&M pulls out that fake punt with Dalton Brooks. We've seen that, Craven, when he was at AT&T Stadium playing for Shiner in the 2A state championship. He had a hell of a day, dude. He also had that fumble recovery at the end of the first half. So huge for Dalton Brooks.
Huge for Dalton Brooks. A&M has 7 tackles for loss. Missouri ran 56 plays. So that defense continues to be great. 5 of 13 on third down, 0 for 1 on fourth down. I don't know if you saw Drinkwitz after the game. He was kind of asked about Mike Elko's defense and just kind of the problems they cause specifically on third down with just how exotic they get. And Drinkwitz was basically like, how much time do you have? And then walk through Elko kind of pulling their pants down 2 or 3 times, hey, we tried to do this. And then A&M did this instead. And we tried to get into max. And so A&M dropped back into zone. And then we did this and that. And so I think he's really taken the reins of this defense. Cassius Howell, just incredible. Just an absolute wrecker of worlds on the defensive side of the ball. The secondary is getting better and better. You are playing a true freshman third string quarterback. And so, what do you take from that? But I think A&M is really, really good. Ruben Owens goes for over 100 yards to kind of give an extension of their run game outside of Marcel Reed, who only had to carry the ball 5 times, which I think is good for them. They want to keep him healthy. So A&M, a complete team, maybe the most complete team in the nation. I think they should be at least number 2 on Tuesday, if not number 1.
I think they definitely hop Indiana, especially after they needed that last second touchdown pass to who did Indiana play again?
Penn State.
Penn State. So I think they'll hop Indiana. The Ohio State one's going to be tough for them to hop because I agree with you. A&M might have the better resume, but Ohio State, just their roster is insane. They won the Natty last year and they could be a better roster this year.
Yeah. Notice I didn't say Texas A&M is the best team in the country, just that they should be ranked number 1.
Right. There we go.
And I think, I don't want to derail our Sunday podcast here. I think to me, that is the crux of my disagreement with the way that this process works. I think we have blurred the idea of best team versus most deserving team or best resume.
Yes.
And we use eye test and all that kind of stuff, but then everybody's 50% or worse gamblers. right? So like, how much do we really know? Like we get seen we know every week that like nobody thought Indiana would almost lose to Penn State in the last second catch there. Like we project too much instead of just going, here are the 11 data points, 10 data points we have. Who is the best team right now? Who is the most deserving team? I do think Ohio State's the favorite to win the national championship. If I had an AP vote, it would be Texas A&M 1, Ohio State 2, Indiana 3.
Well, they do off the eye test and who the best team on paper is, because those teams have the most resources and then lobby the most. And it's all just a positive feedback loop of that's why the SEC and Big Ten teams are all the top teams, and Texas Tech's not a top 5 team in the country.
And it's easier.
Mm-hmm.
It's just easier to be like, well, Ohio State would win on a neutral field and not have to find anything to back that up or prove that, or, like you could just say that and then it's like true. Look at Notre Dame versus Miami or whatever in the CFP. So I would do it by best deserving and what they've done up to this point. And I think A&M has at least an argument to be the top ranked team in the country. But
then I'm also, again, we're derailing here, but I'm talking out of two sides of my mouth here because I'm all like, power to the Big 12 and the ACC. But then on the other hand, dude, the ACC is so bad.
So bad.
The ACC is awful this year.
The ACC is closer to a G5 program or to the American than they are to the Big 10.
Yeah. How concerned are you for Texas A&M? Last thing on them, for giving up over 100 yards rushing to 2 running backs, Jamal Roberts and Ahmad Hardy.
I think if there's something that undoes this Texas A&M team, it's going to be the run game, the run defense. We've seen that going back to the week 1 against UTSA and what they allowed to Robert Henry. They have been gotten on that side of the ball in the run game, and in a close game against a team that also has a solid defense or doesn't have injuries, that may be the thing that ends up costing Texas A&M.
All right, let's take it over to the Big 12 now. TCU falls to an Iowa State team that was on a 4-game losing streak at home, 20-17. This game, the entire time, felt like that classic, hey, TCU wins a game. It just felt like it lost, and then it actually lost because they can't close out games.
Yeah, you remember on the Wednesday podcast when I was like, if TCU's up 21-7, this thing's not over. It happened to be 17-6. But absolutely not over. I went through the numbers a little bit today, and it just feels like an easy formula to identify. When TCU can't run the ball, they throw the ball too much, and they end up throwing interceptions. But beyond that, they start really slow and they end really bad. In their 3 losses, they have been shut out in the first quarter twice. They have 7 points in 3 first quarters in their 3 losses. And then in those same 3 losses, they've been outscored 38-20 in the fourth quarter. So you have bad first quarters, you have bad fourth quarters. They're just, the margins are too small in the Big 12. They're not Texas Tech, where their roster is so much better than everybody that they can find a piddle around a little bit, or like their roster's the same as Iowa State and Kansas State and Arizona State and all these other teams. They are not starting well. They're not ending well. They're turning the ball over too much, and they just don't have the physicality to run the football.
Sonny Dykes said in the post game, he doesn't know if the team's issues are closing out games or if they're just making critical mistakes. And my argument is like, is that not the same thing? Like, that's part of why you can't close out games. You keep making mistakes. Yeah.
I mean, this is the most TCU way to lose a football game ever, is you allow a 79-yard punt return to a walk-on.
By the way, Iowa State has the most white skill position players I've ever seen. This Iowa State team.
That's why their ceiling's so low. But yeah, I just, TCU entered week 11 in the Big 12 race. They exited it wondering if they'll just go 6-6. We talked about it on Wednesday, how small the margins were and how big this game was, because the chasm between 6-6, 7-5, and like 8-4 is a gulf. And you look around, SMU's probably inching back towards the top 25. Texas Tech's taking over the world. And here you are just kind of just, I don't know, just treading water, I guess, since that national championship run. So, I think there's a lot of questions that need to go on behind the scenes with TCU. They need to make a change or two and figure out something, because this isn't doing it. This isn't going to do it.
Hold on, Craven. Sonny did make the point of saying, Iowa State was ranked 12th a month ago, not taking into account that they have lost 4 straight games. They're down 6 of 11 starters on defense.
Yeah, I don't. This Horned Frogs offense is regressing. Josh Hoover is turning the ball over too many times. It is a 3-point game. You were winning 17-6 going into the fourth quarter, and you threw the ball 50 times compared to 30 runs.
And Jeremy Payne was getting like a bunch of yards every time he touched the ball. I know he had that fumble, so that might have maybe made them lose confidence in him. But once again, it's not like they can't run the ball at all.
Kavorian Barnes, 15 carries for 25 yards.
Yeah, that's the one part of like Kavorian Barnes did not have the go-go juice yesterday.
But that's an offensive line deal. Like they just do not push anybody around. They do not have a physicality on offense to hang their hat on. And so it makes it, well, Josh Hoover, go save us. Josh Hoover in this passing offense, go do it. And they had 432 yards of offense to 272. They lost a game in which they had 29 first downs to only 15 given up.
It's hard to do.
It's just, I can't even imagine being a TCU fan right now. Like there's a frustration you would have on a week in, week out basis because you're better than these teams. Like TCU should be in the Big 12 mix alongside Cincinnati, BYU, Texas Tech. Like they'd be playing for second, but they should be there with Utah, and they're just not. And it's because they have no physicality to speak of on the offensive side of the ball. That puts their defense in a huge hole. I mean, they only allowed 7 points off of those turnovers.
Defense was great. Bud Clark 2 interceptions.
So you get everything you want out of Andy Avalos in that defense. Kendall Briles' offense needs to figure it out because he is known as a running back coach. Like at Arkansas, but his dad at Baylor, like they run the football, and they have not been able to do that in Fort Worth. And the difference between 2022 and the rest of these seasons under Sonny Dykes is Kendre Miller and that offense with Max Duggan. They could run the ball. They could Steve Avila, they could get in your face and run the ball in 2022. They cannot in the last 3 seasons, and it's continued, and it's cost them in each one of their losses.
Well, a team that is in the Big 12 championship race is Houston. Are they officially in the Big 12 championship race, or are they kind of on the outside looking in?
They're on the outside looking in. They would definitely need some help from the teams above them.
They're doing better than TCU is kind of my point. Like they are where TCU should be right now. They end an 8-game losing streak to UCF in the Space game, 30-27. This was Friday night game. My big takeaway is the win comes despite 4 turnovers on offense, and that was the recipe of Houston losing games up to this point. 7 of 8 turnovers were in their 2 losses. Now they have 12 turnovers after a 4-turnover game, and 3 interceptions by Philip Dunham on UCF. That man had a day.
Yeah, this was the first time that they've ever won a game with a minus turnover margin under Willie Fritz. So they did kind of flip the script there, and they avoided what would have been a horrendous. They start 6-1, but if you lose back-to-back weeks to West Virginia and in Central Florida, it all kind of tumbles down, right? At least from the outside perception of what the program is, not going to be looked upon in the same light. But you figure out a way to escape there. Shout out to Austin Armstrong's defense for kind of holding serve despite those 4 turnovers. Only allowed. I think 7 points off those 4 turnovers. And so they held them in the game, 10 points off those 4 turnovers. So held them in the game. I'm curious. I wanted to run this by you because you've played quarterback and I never have. Connor Wigman is running the ball a lot. 22 carries again yesterday. As his carries have mounted up, because early in the season, they were 6, 7, 8 times. And then it's been 15, 22, 23, 19. And his interceptions have also gone up during that time. Do you think they're correlated? Do you think he's running the ball so much physicality going on, the bumps and bruises I'm imagining are adding up week to week, that's causing some of the interceptions in the pass game? Yeah,
maybe he's throwing interceptions because he needs a breather and he needs to go to the sideline for a second. I think part of it could be he's just more physically tired, and when you're tired, you make worse decisions. So I think there could be a correlation for sure. I think a lot of quarterbacks need to get hit and then they get in the game and start playing better. I think Arch Manning is that way. I think Connor Wegman's that way. But there is a balance for sure. I think he's almost running too much now, and they probably need to get Dean Connors going a little bit more, to where you're not so Connor Wegman dependent. But I think they're a little correlated. Yeah, I think it's a good observation.
Wigman ran the ball 22 times. The running backs ran it 25.
Yeah,
Of the 80 plays Houston ran, the ball was in Wigman's hands 54 times between throws and runs. Like, it is build the plane out of Wigman, and it just feels like he is regressing in the passing game a little bit, starting to turn the ball over, make some mistakes, and I just imagine fatigue and just the bumps and bruises can't be helping.
No, 100%. But yes, shout out again, Austin Armstrong's defense. I mean, allowed UCF to have 136 passing yards, which was their lowest total of the year. The LaTravion McCutcheon pick six was sick. Kentrell Webb, the game-winning interception, as UCF's driving to win the game. So that was a standout performance from the defense. And Connor Wegman said he went down the line and personally thanked every defensive player for helping them win that game.
Houston could get to 10 wins.
Oh, yeah. Especially if they keep winning on the road. They're 5-0 on the road.
They got Baylor and TCU left, plus the bowl game. Just an incredible coaching job by Willie Fritz in year two, with two new coordinators and a virtually almost new roster on both sides of the ball. Hit the ground running, just immaculate. Honestly, a really, really good coaching job.
Are you invested in the battle of who the real Space City is? That beef?
No.
Okay, yeah, me neither. I was wondering because I saw a lot of conversations, who's the real Space City? I mean, Willie Fritz is showing his team a NASA documentary on Thursday. I don't really care.
Nope. Whatever you need to do to get going. And it's made the game interesting. There's some stakes there between the fan bases and the student bodies and stuff like that. So, shout out for getting creative. The Big 12.
I think I might have lost you. Hello.
I think my internet went out for a second.
I got you now. All right.
Okay.
Perfect. We'll go on to SMU. I got you. I had you for most of the take, so it should cut fine.
Okay.
All right. Let's go to ACC and SMU. They just smoked Boston College 45-13. SMU came into this game leading the FBS with 22 turnovers gained, and Boston College quarterback Grayson James got benched following 2 first quarter fumbles. So that Scott Simon's defense is electric.
Yeah, they are the best scoring defense in the ACC in conference play, allowing like 16.3 points per game. They've been great. You mentioned leading the country in turnovers forced now with 26. They're 11th in tackles for loss and 4th in sacks. They just make plays. They just create big plays. And this is after losing Elijah Roberts and Ahmad Walker and Kobe Wilson and Jonathan McGill. Like, they did not spend in the transfer portal in the same way. The previous year, they were getting defensive tackles from Georgia. This year, they're getting them from Texas State, right? And it took them a little bit to get going. I mean, they gave up 48 to Baylor, 35 to TCU. And since then, they've just been incredible. As I mentioned, 16.3 points per game. Even in that loss, they allowed 13 points, and that was when SMU turned the ball over 4 times. Like, this is a defensive team, and anybody who paid attention to SMU before Simons got there knows how crazy that statement is. For a long time, even when they were good under Sonny and even when they were good year one under Lashley, it was an offensive-dominated program. And Simons has made them an elite defensive unit, the best unit in the ACC. And if they get back to Charlotte and play for a conference championship game again, it will be because that defense was able to step it up and figure it out as the season went on. And that's hard to do during the year.
Yeah, shout out Scott Simons. I think a big reason, too, for why they've improved so much is Isaiah Smith at defensive end and guys like that. Smith tied the program record with 4 sacks yesterday in a single game. I felt like at the beginning of the year, the defensive line had fallen off because the homegrown guys in the program weren't playing up to the potential the staff thought they had. I have no inside information. That's just what I thought from the outside. But he has been dominant in ACC play, and they've turned their fortunes around because of it.
Yeah, and it felt like the run game got going a little bit yesterday in a way that was missing. And so, that's a good sign. We've talked about it before. We think Brashard Smith was probably the biggest loss offensively for them and just trying to figure out what to do committee wise. Haven't been excellent there, but had 574 yards of total offense, 22 first downs. So really good there. The thing that kills me about SMU is the penalties. They are just sloppy. They led the country last year in penalty yards against. Even in this win where they crushed Boston College, they have 13 penalties for 155 yards.
Dude.
So need to clean that up. You'd imagine in a close games like that's going to come back to bite you. But defensively, they've been really good. Kevin Jennings has been excellent. It felt like the run game came alive, but that's probably more of a Boston College deal here. And quietly, SMU is probably a top 25 team when the polls come out, and they are right in the thick of it in the ACC race in what you already aptly described as a very crappy conference.
Yeah, they play Louisville on November 22nd, which just was super interesting after SMU smoked Boston College, but now Louisville lost last night to Cal. So nobody wants to win this conference right now.
Yeah, I've planned to go to 3 different SMU games, and each time I start making my plans, something happens to make the game not that big. I was going to go, to the Miami game, and then they lost the week before to Wake Forest. I was thinking about going to the Louisville game, and then Louisville, loses, and to make that one not as big. So, I was just talking to Lashley, and it was nobody's talking about us this year, and we like it that way. They have really just kind of flown under the radar as a team that maybe is not as good as last year. The conference isn't as good. They've just kind of been on the back burner, but we're entering mid-November, and SMU's got a shot to win a conference championship. And if they do that, no matter how bad the ACC is, they're going to be in the college football playoff again. So everything to play in front of them. They don't play Virginia. They don't play Georgia Tech. They don't play some of the best teams in this conference that they're tied with one loss with. If they can win out, they probably get to Charlotte.
The penalties is an interesting part of SMU's rise too, because I think SMU is one of the best coached teams in Texas. I think Rhett Lashley is one of the best coaches in Texas. But they're so penalized, and that's usually a mark of a poorly coached football team. So I don't that's just weird. I don't really have an explanation for it.
They are 131st in the country in penalty yards per game at 71.2. The only team, can you guess the only team that's worse than them in the state?
Texas State.
UTSA.
Oh.
And those were the 2 worst teams in the country last year in penalty yards against, were UTSA and SMU.
Well, let's talk about those Roadrunners. They give up 45 points in the first half against South Florida on Thursday night, which was the most they've ever allowed in a half in school history. It's their 8th straight conference road loss. I'm going to read to you a Jeff Traylor quote from Monday before game week. It couldn't be a worse matchup for us. We've just got to go in there somehow and see if we can keep that thing close. He's not talking about playing the Texas Longhorns. He's talking about playing USF.
Yeah. USF was up 14-0 and hadn't even played an offensive snap.
I think UTSA lost this game before they played. Honestly.
Yeah. I mean, they lost this game when the schedule was made.
Yeah, true.
South Florida is the best G5 team in the country. They may not be the G5 representative in the college football playoff, but if you were to, because again, this goes back to best, first, most deserving. I'm not trying to argue that South Florida will be the most deserving. They've lost to Memphis. Maybe they don't get in because of tiebreakers and whatever. But if you line it up and you line them up against any G5 team you want in the country, they're going to be favored by a touchdown or more. They lost that Memphis game. They were up 17 points in the fourth quarter. They are incredible. I walked the field in Denton when they played against South Florida, and I made this joke. I called my bookie and was like, more on South Florida, please. They are created differently than most G5 football teams. And so Traylor has a point. I just don't think you say it. They just couldn't block South Florida. They gave up 6 sacks, 12 tackles for loss. They ran the ball 38 times for 72 yards. Even if you sack adjust it, they only averaged 3.6 yards a carry. That's with Robert Henry, who had 10 carries for 27 yards. So some of it was game script. You're down 14-0 right off the bat against an explosive USF offense, and now you got to go throw the ball around the yard and figure it out. But they just had no chance. That I think that game Thursday night more about South Florida than it is UTSA. They were coming off an idle week after blowing a game against Memphis. They were going to beat everybody by 20-something points. They beat North Texas by 27. They beat UTSA by 32. Like that. This is just a really good football team.
What do you think of the American Athletic Conference coaches like kind of getting petty with each other in press conferences?
I think it's just dumb. I don't get what Golish. I don't get this idea that when a coach says that your roster is more expensive, that means the things that he said it did. Right? Like he was like, when you say that we have a more expensive roster, that means that you're discounting the relationships and the recruiting and the development and the love. I was like, no, it doesn't. Like that's like Dave Campbell's pays me more than anybody else would. And that doesn't mean I hate all y'all. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have to be an either or situation. Like we can be grown-ups about this and go like, yeah, our payroll is twice what everybody else's is in the American outside of maybe Memphis and Tulane. Like you don't see Texas Tech being butthurt about it. And I get like, you got to find ways to motivate your team and you're as much talk. Like, I don't know. I just think it's very dumb. I think it's a new age problem where these coaches are still trying to pretend it's the old days and that somehow talking about money discounts what they're doing inside of their program. And I just don't understand why they see it that way.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, let's speak of the other most penalized team. It is Texas State. They lose another shootout, 42-39 to Louisiana. They had 11 penalties for 114 yards and then started a post-game brawl after. Not a pretty sight.
Yeah. They've given up 40 points in 4 straight games. They are allowing, I had this down a second ago, 42.6 points per game in conference play.
Insane.
There's just no way around it. GJ Kinney has to make a change at defensive coordinator. Next year, going into the Pac-12, too important for this program, too important for the athletics department and the university in general. You need to hit the ground running in the Pac-12, and you cannot do it with this defensive side of the ball. They are scoring. I had it down. Like they're scoring over 30 points per game and 0-5. Like you just can't do that. 33.4 points per game in conference play, and they're 0-5. Like it is very much North Texas of the last 2 years. And Eric Morris made a change at defensive coordinator and completely rewrote the expectations at North Texas. And it's not because the Mean Green have turned into Ohio State. They're 66th in scoring defense. But with how explosive that offense is, middle of the pack is good enough. And I feel like Texas State is in that same boat. The way they play offense, the way they score points, they're going to give them up on the back end. But if you can get to 70th in the country in scoring defense instead of 130th, you're 6-3 right now or something, like the record is reversed of what it is. And you're still in Sun Belt play and all that kind of stuff. So I don't want to be reductive, but it just feels like the defense is holding this program back. And until there's a change made, it's going to continue to be that way.
Do you have like existential problems with Texas State or existential fears about this program with GJ Kinney? Or do you think it's as simple as they need to just make a change at DC and they're going to be okay?
I think they got worse from a personnel standpoint because their top 4 defensive linemen got transferred to P4 schools, and their defensive coordinator is like coaching in his 5th year, and he doesn't know how to make the adjustments in the middle of the game in the way that he should. And that just comes from experience. Like that's not saying Dexter McCoy can't be a really, really good defensive coordinator. I think the combination of the personnel being worse and him being in year 2 and kind of found out a little bit. There's film on him. I think offenses are attacking him and to see if they can make adjustments, and Texas State simply can't. Like if you can win early, you can win late. And that's just what it is against the Texas State defense right now.
Yeah. I mean, for as bad as it's gotten with 5 straight losses, 4 of those 5 games are by a combined 14 points. So like they are close, even with how porous the defense is.
Yeah. I mean, what's their record if they give up 30 points per game?
6-3.
I mean, and that's a solid season, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like that's how small these margins are. And that's on Kenny and the staff. Like, I don't know how much more they could have done personnel wise. Like those are just the breaks in the G5 level. And occasionally you need to get lucky, like Skylar Cassidy brought in half of a starting defense, right? Like that's hard to do. but it's very clear that this is a Jekyll and Hyde type football team. They can score a bunch of points. Even though Brad Jackson, you can tell he was pressing early on, and that probably comes from knowing you got to score 45 points tonight or you're going to lose. And they almost made a great comeback. The defense did play better in the second half, but I don't know. Maybe I'm too close to the trees to see it here, but it just feels very much like North Texas. And that we talked about it till we were blue in the face that if North Texas got average on defense, they could win the conference, and they're doing the exact same thing. I think G.J. Kinney's got to follow that exact same blueprint and fix the defense, and they'll be fine next year.
Let's talk about some sick defense. It's Rice shutting out UAB in the second half, 24-17. The Owls are 5-5. Quarterback Chase Jenkins goes 11 for 15 for 41 yards and 2 touchdowns. How is that possible? That is the craziest stat line I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's very much like an Army bus one on you stat line that they occasionally have. Rice has been really good at kind of beating these type of teams that should is probably the wrong word because they're Rice, but they've done really well against like competition. Their wins are Louisiana, Prairie View A&M, Charlotte, UConn was the big upset. Now they go beat UAB, and so what I find to be the most pleasing thing about the Scott Abel season so far is they're already kind of knocking down the peer teams, like those other teams that you kind of consider in the bottom half of the American. They're already winning a lot of those games. FAU may be the only one that they didn't. And they're not like fluky upsets. They didn't pull like an upset against like a Memphis or something like that. Like that will come later. They've already developed kind of like a high floor. Like I think they're going to be a high floor, low ceiling program under Abel. And we're already starting to see that. And this is before he even gets his guys in there. Chase Jenkins getting better and better. It was nice to see the defense get back on track. They were really good early in the year, kind of have been found out a little bit. The last few games gave up 61 to UTSA, 34 to UConn, 38 to Memphis. To kind of get back into those teens was huge. A big win for Rice, and they're probably going to go to a bowl game at 5-7 if there's not enough bowl teams eligible.
Speaking of offensive stat lines that make no sense, Sam Houston is the first team since at least 1995 to win despite gaining less than 200 yards of total offense and being outgained by over 300 yards. The Bearcats overcome a 17-point deficit to knock off Oregon State 21-17. This is awesome. This is awesome, dude.
Are we in the trust tree, Carter? Can I admit something that's embarrassing? It was 17-0 at halftime. It was like close to midnight. I had been up since 5:30 in the morning, and I went to bed.
Unbelievable of you to do that.
I did the power poll. I even wrote Sam Houston's little section in the power poll. Went to bed, woke up at like 4:00 in the morning because I'm broken as a human, sleep-wise, and was like, I'll see how bad Sam Houston lost. I'll see if Oregon State covered is really what went through my head. Because they were up 17-0. The line was like 20.5, I think. And it was like, I'll see if Sam Houston was able to cover. And I I didn't even have my glasses on. It's 4:00 in the morning in a dark hotel room in Snyder. And it says 21-17 to Sam Houston. And I'm like seeing how far I can get the phone from my face. Like I'm rubbing the sleep out of my eye, and the score didn't change. 2 special teams touchdowns in the second half, and then you shut them out. It's 3 phases of the game, and Sam Houston won 2 out of the 3 of them.
Yeah, and 3 defensive takeaways too. So shout out Freddie Autry-Lindsey and that defense, who's been much maligned this year, but comes up huge against Oregon State.
Okay, this is my favorite. You read off some crazy stats, and those are awesome. But they won a game with their leading passer throwing for 43 yards, their leading rusher rushing for 29 yards, and their leading receiver catching for 47.
And 8 first downs.
8 first downs. So they don't ask you how. They ask you how many. And they avoided 0-9. We talked about it. Winless was on the menu, and they were able to go on the road in Corvallis in a place. I mean, they could have quit at halftime. You're down 17-0. It's 0-8. You're not going to get home
quit at halftime.
Right. I quit at halftime. That's absolutely correct. So shout out to them. And that Sam Houston has seen the benefits of building some momentum on the back end of a bad season. Like it can carry over to the next year. If you're Longo and co, that's what you're selling right now. Hey, if we can win a couple of these down the stretch, kind of find our players, figure out what we need help in. Maybe we can go attack the transfer portal this year in a way we couldn't last year. And 26 will be differently when we have a home stadium again. Like maybe that's all untrue, but you can sell that if you win a couple of these games down the stretch, start off with beating an Oregon State team that's not any good, but who cares? Don't apologize for it. You won the football game, you go back home and you try to build some positive vibes off of it.
Yeah, because, hey, guess who also started 1-8 in the FBS 2 years ago? Casey Keeler.
Yeah, right.
And I know we've said that not all 1-8s are the same, right? Casey Keeler's Sam Houston was a lot more competitive, but still same record and still the same. Casey Keeler's team in 2023 won 3 of the last 4.
Yep.
And then launch padded themselves into that 10-win season. So this has the same ingredients potentially. So like you said.
100%.
All right, last team on the docket is UTEP. They fall to Jacksonville State 30-27 on a last-minute field goal. I got a question for you, Craven. Does Scotty Walden saying we're in year 2 of building this thing and it's a process play with the fan base when he's lost to Jacksonville State and Kennesaw State back-to-back weeks, 2 teams that are on first-year head coaches?
No. And it doesn't hold a lot of weight with the UTEP is just starved for a winner. And by winner, I don't mean 10-2. I mean 7-5.
Mm-hmm.
They've done that 4 times this century, 2 times since 2004. And so this will be their 4th. They have 7 losses now. This will be their 4th straight losing season. I think it's like 9 out of the last 10 have been losing seasons. And so they're in the wake me up when it changes. Like they're sick of it's a process. It's hard. We're in year 2. This is because that all can be true, but it's falling on deaf ears because to your point, they're seeing other upstart programs that don't have a lot of FBS history, that don't have long tenured head coaches jump up and bite them at home. And so UTEP just can't get over the hump. We talked about it on the Wednesday podcast when we were talking about where the line was and stuff. You take the team that's proven that they can win ugly games, and that's Jack State, who did this against Sam Houston. And you don't take the team that's proven that they can lose games that they shouldn't. And that's been UTEP. They probably should have 4-ish wins. They should probably be 4-5 with a chance to kind of close out strong. But they've blown these games, and they don't execute down the stretch. They get costly penalties, just the stuff that losing programs do. And they have to figure out that part of it.
They've also had one 100-yard rusher this entire year, and it was week 2 against UT Martin. So just not going to win like that.
Yeah, I mean, Skylar Locklear was their leading rusher with 82 yards. Emory had 37 on 10 carries. Like they're just not. They've gotten bigger and better in the trenches, but still not to the level in which they need to be.
For a guy who wasn't even the starter for the first 6 games, this offense has quickly turned into Skylar Locklear, please save us.
Which is why I don't understand how he didn't win the job from the beginning. I do think Malachi offers a higher ceiling, and if you're a coach watching them in practice, you probably fall in love with the arm talent. And you go, wow, if we can just figure this out, we can go do something big. But the turnovers cost them. I think Skylar fits what they can do personnel-wise. But again, in these small margin games where you probably are equal or less talent-wise, like you just can't have the penalties, you can't have the turnovers, the negative plays that UTEP tends to have in big moments. Shout
out the Tarps Off crew, though, at the Sun Bowl. That was electric. But they might have also been the only ones in the stadium because it was some of those crowd shots or lack thereof were yikes.
Yeah, I texted a buddy. I was like, did the pandemic come back to El Paso? Like, what is going on out there? It looked like it was a behind closed doors event that nobody was allowed to go see.
Yeah, it's not going well right now in the Sun City. It's cloudy in the Sun City, and hopefully those clouds clear up here in year 3 of the Scotty Walden era.
But like Texas State, like next year they're going to the Mountain West Conference, and that's been something this fan base has clamored for a long time. Like you were hoping that you built some momentum this year to kind of launch pad into that. And it's just been the opposite. And that's devastating and it's disheartening, I think, to the fan base. And that's why where even if Scotty's right, that there's improvements going on and you can see it and like inside the locker room, there's still belief. I think they've lost the outside because of just years and years of baggage and trauma, it's just the same old if you're a UTEP fan. And, I think they thought that they thought it was going to get better and it stayed the same. And that can be demoralizing to a fan base.
Yeah, I thought it was going to get better. I had them as a bowl team in the magazine this summer.
Same. I took the over at 5.5.
We got to stop ending the episodes on such bummers. I should have ended with Sam Houston. That's my bad.
Yeah, that's true. Have you looked at our over and unders before the season yet? Or since the season?
I have not.
You should. You're dominating.
Well, it evens out because my fantasy team was the worst fantasy team of all time, and
that's true.
My over-unders hit.
Yeah, you've been doing great on the over-unders. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 9 that are already settled. 9 of the 13 are settled. So still a lot to play for, kind of down the stretch here. But you would have, if you put $1,000 on each of those, you and your lady would be taking a big time vacation this offseason.
Well, there's a reason I'm not a gambling man, is because of my fantasy football team.
I might bankroll you next year. See how this goes. We split the pot.
All right, that's gonna do it for this week's recap of Texas college football. Craven, any big thoughts about this weekend, or any quick look ahead to next week? What we got to expect on the midweek preview show?
Okay, I'll give you a bad and a good. I'll start with the bad. That way we don't end on a bad note. The P4 teams in this state are 51-15. The G5 teams are 23-32. So very bad. The only team with a winning record on a G5 ranks for us is North Texas. The good, though, we have 5 legitimate college football playoff contenders going into mid-November, and that is cool. Texas A&M is virtually locked in there. It's about seeding at this point. Texas Tech feels like the class of the Big 12, and if they don't stub their toe and blow it, they feel like a college football playoff team. Texas goes on the road next week against Georgia, and that'll be a huge one that could decide a playoff spot for the Longhorns. SMU is in the ACC title contention, and then North Texas, I think the only worry for North Texas is running back into South Florida. And so, I think North Texas with their schedule left, which is UAB, Rice, and Temple, has a great chance to be 11-1, get to the American, and if they win that game, they're in the playoff too. So not out of the realm of possibilities that the Lone Star State has 5 of the 12 college football playoff teams. I think it's more likely that it's probably 2 or 3. But the fact that we can have 5 of our 13 programs still be this invested into mid-November is a sign that the expansion was a good deal for kind of the mid-pack of college football.
Yeah, this is everything you could have wanted for Texas college football fans. Just, you're telling me there's a chance for 5 of these teams getting in. There's more than a chance for some of them, like A&M, like you mentioned.
It was 6, and then TCU happened. So,
for senior writer Mike Craven, I am Carter Yates signing off for this week in the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast.